All right, so now here we are at the nerve-wracking point. We've got the old camshaft out, so all those tappets are freestanding in there on the wood dowels. Got the cam gear off. Jesse is getting our new cam. It's been in a deep freeze. Get it nice and cold so it shrinks as much as possible, so it's not that difficult to put the cam gear back on this one. And now's the critical time just for nerves alone with those tappets, you know, being able to fall out into the oil pan. We want to get this process done and turned around as quick as possible. Yep, that's really expensive. Super lube? Yep, super lube. Really expensive stuff. For so much. Water. Ice. I feel like maybe we should let it thaw out, warm up a little bit. We're gonna give it a minute. Camshaft's done. Now I just want to make sure piston 1 is at TDC, so I've got the injectors out and can roll this thing over a little bit. There it's going down. There it's coming back up, going back down. Cool. So we have it at TDC. That way we have the piston as close to the valves as possible. So when we go to remove the valve spring retainers and valve springs to swap them out for the performance valve springs and everything we have, we know the valves can't drop out into the engine. They're pretty much in contact with the piston, which will hold them up in place. So both 1 and 6 are now at TDC, and next will be 2 and 5, and then 3 and 4. So yeah, we got the cam swapped out, got the new thrust bearing in place, getting that all torqued. Now we can pull the wooden dowels, the tappets all stayed in place, and on to the next part of this. We've already completed the camshaft upgrade. We've already completed the valve spring swap. Now we're jumping into head studs. We want to run a little bit higher boost. The factory head bolts only work to around 40 PSI of boost, and then they start to stretch. So in order to do that without completely disassembling the engine and doing a whole new head gasket and everything else, we're going to go through and replace one at a time throughout the torque sequence the head bolts with a head stud. We're starting off at number 1. We will final torque those instead of doing the 3-step torque because of the fact that we have the head gasket already compressed there. We don't want to relieve anything. So right now Jesse's doing number 1. We're going to get through all of them. And just a little pro tip for you, for those of you that are just jumping into this, 6 of these head studs are longer than the rest. Those 6 go right next to the exhaust manifold, so you know. And now you can judge people moving forward. If you ever see anyone who's got a Cummins with a, you know, head studs that are shorter and longer along the exhaust manifold, they didn't read the instructions. Anywho, carry on. Day 2 engine work, COVID Cummins. We are done with the camshaft. We've just removed the CP3 pump. We did all the valve springs. We got all the head studs done. Now we're gonna start going back together. We've got a set of Dynamite diesel injectors. These are brand new, off the shelf. He's taken them wire EDM'd the nozzles to make them specific for our build and what we're looking for. I think he said they work out to be about 120 horse injector, and then he's flown them to smooth out all the rough edges. We're gonna run through, set up the injectors. The injector setup process is a little interesting. It doesn't take a whole lot to clamp these things down, but the way you seat the transfer tube and that whole process takes a little bit more, just so that we can ensure proper sealing and everything's working right. We do have brand new transfer tubes. Anytime I swap out a set of injectors, I like to make sure that we change those out as well, so there's no deformation on the tapered seat for where it feeds the injector. After that, we're gonna roll through a valve adjustment, run through, set the valves 10 and 20, and then button all that back up. We can finish up the remainder of the fuel system stuff and start buttoning up the front end here. Maybe, you know, kick the tires, light some fires, and whoo, see how she does. So I'm lining up the feed port on the injector with the direction the transfer tube will come in. All right, just as a safeguard for any of you that are jumping into doing injectors on your own in your driveway, your new injectors are gonna come with a copper tip seal. Those things press on and fit really nice for when you're installing your new injectors. However, you need to make sure that the old injectors, when they came out, all had that copper seal on there and it didn't stay down in the hole. That will end up making these injectors sit up a little bit too high, which will prevent proper alignment of the transfer tube to the injector. So just take your time, slow is fast, look through all the injector holes, make sure no copper tip seals are sitting in there, and then proceed. So on these transfer tubes, we got the injectors in. I put the injector hold down bolts in loosely with some blue Loctite. You've got these alignment bearings essentially. They go to the top when you pop these in. And you put them in firm till they snap. The injector hold down bolts are, I want to say 72 inch-pounds. And the transfer tube hold down torque is 60 foot-pounds. And I like to do things a little bit incrementally, like I'll do it pretty light by finger tight on the injector hold down bolt. I'll put the transfer tubes in, and then I will do an initial torque on the injector hold downs of what works out to be about 3 foot-pounds, and I'll do 30 foot-pounds on the transfer tube hold down, and then I will go back to full torque on the injectors at 6 foot-pounds and the 60 foot-pounds on the transfer tube hold down. And from there, that's that. All right, so we got the push tubes in. Now we're putting the bridges on for the valves. The rockers themselves will push down on these. These are an upgraded part from Fleece Performance. They're much stronger than the factory ones, but they still have the oblong hole on one side and the regular hole on the other. They also chamfered out the inside here that goes up against the injector, so that if you're running a higher performance cam that has more lift and whatnot, this doesn't end up interfering with the shock body. So something to think about when you put those on. The chamfer goes towards the injector itself. These are the push tubes that transfer the lift from the camshaft up to the rockers for the valves. The rockers get torqued down to 27 foot-pounds. We have to roll it over until we figure out which one is in overlap. Once we know, well, we know firing order is 153624. So if one is in overlap, intake and exhaust valves are moving at the same time, we know that 6, the opposing cylinder, is TDC, and we can set the valves on 6. So that's how I run through it. Follow the firing order and then do the opposing cylinder for whatever was in overlap. And we'll set the intake valves, which are this side, to 10 and 20 thousandths on the exhaust. So, okay. All right, 6 is in overlap, so we can set the valves on 1. Okay, so 6 Next will be overlap on 2. We'll see this valve, this rocker come up, and that one start to go down. And that's when we'll stop and we can set the valves on 5.
All right, everybody, got ourselves a little update on the COVID Cummins here. Jesse has been out here working his tail off, getting the hard part done, while I've been sitting in my cushy office chair answering phone calls, which I greatly appreciate. We got the compounds set up in here. I'm really impressed by BD's ability to make a kit that drops in where it's supposed to. Didn't really have to do anything. You just put the parts that are supposed to go, follow the instructions, and you have a good time. The only thing that we did need to change, even though I just did contradict myself, but it's because we're putting lots of different parts on this truck, is the shock tower. The Carly shock tower we actually had to do a 180 with because it wasn't going to fit with the atmospheric turbo in the back there. You'll probably see right down here. Not a whole lot of clearance, and this actually normally is flipped around, which means there was definitely not any clearance there. So did a quick 180 on that, and we are good to go. As you can see, we've got all the front accessories off, and Jesse has installed our dynamite diesel injectors on here already. We are getting ready to do the CP3 on this truck. Now, we elected to go with the Fleece Performance, their 10 mil pump, which is rated for easily 750 horsepower, which is where we're going to be with this. They do have dyno sheets that it's made more than that, but as far as like where you have to guarantee a pump at, 750 horsepower all day, single pump, reliable. So we're going to be putting that pump on here. Pretty stoked on that. We've been selling Fleece CP3s for a very long time. If you're not quite getting up to that 750 horsepower range, they also have their Fleece CP3K, which is great for all those people, you know, doing basics as far as intake, tuner, exhaust, small set of injectors. CP3K is going to be an awesome pump for you. But the 10 mil is going to sit right here. It's going to give us all the fuel we need. That is also going to be fed by the Fleece in-tank pump, which will supply, I don't remember the gallon per hour. I want to say it's around 150. I'll probably have to put a little note up here, bing, where it says exactly what the output is. But that will be feeding us through here, and that'll feed our dynamite injectors underneath the valve cover. And that should give us all the fuel we need to light up these snails over here. So we're gonna get going on this. Jesse's currently siping some tires because it's winter here now in Spokane, which means everybody's trying to get more grip with their tires. If you've never seen what a siping machine does, just check it out. Google siping machine with tires. It just puts a whole lot of cuts in it. It's pretty cool. So we'll keep cracking on this and get you an update pretty soon.